Dude, just get the cheaper one. The other one is overpriced and it's not worth it. Save the money, and who freaking cares if it's made in China? Look, I get supporting US companies, but come on. It's gonna be just as good and half the cost. We all know the saying, you get what you pay for. It exists for a reason. You can buy cheap and regret it, or you can support US companies and never look back. Have you ever been on Amazon looking at a product, and maybe you've been shopping an American company, but you find a product on Amazon and you're like, how the heck is that product so freaking cheap? Well, I bought a dueling tree on Amazon. And at the time of making this video, I paid around 300 bucks for this thing, and I think I paid like 30 bucks to ship it. So for under $400, I have a complete dueling tree, and I want to tell you how they did it. I want to tell you why it is so cheap, and then I'm going to look at our dueling tree and kind of compare it a little bit. So when we're talking about dueling trees, there's always a temptation to go cheap. And there's only a couple ways that you can make a dueling tree cheap, because dueling trees tend to be expensive because there's a lot of welding, there's always forming, there's a lot of material, and you basically have a lot of time and labor into the product. And that's why even the inexpensive dueling trees are going to be a couple $100 bucks at least. But one of the biggest ways I see people saving money is making them tiny and sacrificing the strength and integrity of the front shield. So first off, looking at the base of this thing, they burned it out of 1/4 inch steel. I can only assume that's mild steel, but I don't know because I have no way to test it right here. But the base basically is flat pieces that bolt together, they interlock. It's simple, but it's also very tiny. We had this thing fall over just a couple times, probably 2 or 3 times, just even on the flat ground here. So I have some concerns when we're shooting it, which we'll talk about in another video. The base itself, in my opinion, is off in that one point where they sacrifice along with that front shield. When we're looking at the front shield construction on this, instead of using an angle, basically an L-shaped piece of steel, they burned out a rectangle, threw it in a press brake, and bent it. And this is 3/16 mild steel. This is not armored at all. So if you would hit this with a rifle, you absolutely would punch a hole right through it immediately, first time, no questions asked. If you hit this with a pistol, likely you're also gonna dent it, and that can cause some problems. When we're looking at the paddles themselves, I actually was impressed that they have a little keyway here. That's a feature we've always had on our dueling trees. I learned it many, many years ago. If you don't have that little ledge that can bite onto the gusset, basically keyway onto the gusset so it can't pop out, as you shoot a dueling tree without that, the paddles will actually exit the chat. They'll go flying all over the place, which I guess could be funny, but when you spent a bunch of money on something, you want it to work properly. The gussets themselves on the back, they kept the cost down because they're tiny, super, super, super tiny. So this whole thing is only about belly button height to me. So that's probably about 4.5 feet tall or so. The paddles themselves, although I was impressed with that gusset, I learned something many, many years ago. You don't want sharp corners anytime a line intersects when we're burning AR-550 or AR-500 steel. So where this thing will break over time, you'll see cracks forming from this corner. They'll start to just kind of spread out. But because this little leg is so tiny and all of the impact forces are exerted basically on those tiny corners, and there's no radiuses on this paddle whatsoever, I would assume that maybe in a couple thousand rounds or less, this thing will break. You're probably wondering, hey Jared, that's a lot of talking, but I want to see some shooting. I got good news for you. Check the card up here, link down in the description. We got another video torture testing this little dueling tree. So after we're done here, check it out. And that's a common issue I see with dueling trees. When we come to the back of the spine here, the gussets, they're not done horribly. I don't know if these are hardened steel. I'm assuming they're not because they're already gouging out a little bit. But if you make a dueling tree like this and you don't use hardened steel in the gussets, what ends up happening is you get a cheaper dueling tree, but as this thing rotates back and forth, if this paddle's actually AR-500 or AR-550, it will egg out that hole incredibly fast. But you can already see that that paddle arm is so loose in this gusset, which means you're gonna get a lot of extra wear and tear on the system as well. So overall, that's how people save money on dueling trees. They sacrifice the armor. They downsize it to the point where it's unstable, where it literally will fall over. And on top of that, because of how small this thing is, and the fact that the paddles rest right up against the shield, if I throw one paddle, multiple paddles will move. And I know some of you are like, oh, Jared, you're just poo-pooing all over this dueling tree. That's not the point. I'm trying to educate you on what a quality dueling tree will be constructed like. But if I hit 2 paddles lightly, I'm not even exerting that much force, the paddles just absolutely freak out. And I can only assume that when we shoot this thing in the durability test video, when we're running 2 people on this thing, these paddles are going to be going crazy. The biggest thing I want to hammer into you guys is when you buy something cheap, you sacrifice something every time. It does not matter what you are buying. If you are buying it cheap, you're sacrificing something. The last point I want to point out to you guys is the paddles rest right up against the shield. And again, that could be a major problem because if you think of the fragmentation hitting the paddle, it can hit the paddle, hit the shield, and go right back to the shooter. A good dueling tree should actually have those paddles spaced back much further. So you give up something. And the question for you as we're diving into our dueling tree next is, are you willing to sacrifice on the quality and the safety to save a couple bucks? So when we look at the TA targets, rifle rated dueling tree, one thing is going to stand out immediately. I guess 2 things will stand out immediately. The size of the base and just how much bigger this dueling tree is. You might be asking yourself, Jared, why the heck is this thing so big? And the reality is, this is right size. This is the way a dueling tree, in my opinion, should be. It should be nice and tall so you're engaging those targets at a nice angle. It should be spaced out enough with the paddles that you get a full-size paddle and you get amazing stability. The round base is shown here. We've got that on our dueling tree, but we've also got a breakdown base with the extension that's available. We've got a couple base options. But when we talk about this dueling tree, my objective was to make a dueling tree that can handle everything within reason. And I'll talk about that at the end of this video. But starting with the base, we've got our 26-inch welded base. This is extremely stable. We've got a huge footprint. You will not have the issues that you had with the small dueling tree with this thing falling forward. It's just not going to happen. Now, obviously, you want it to be on flat ground so that the paddles react the way they're supposed to, but you're going to have immense stability. The 26-inch ring has holes all around it. If you want to stake it down, you can. Further, when we go to the shield, instead of using angles or mild steel or anything like that, this shield is 2 pieces of laser cut AR500 steel welded into a V. On top of that, I learned something many, many years ago. Don't expose welds. It doesn't matter what you do. If you have a weld that is exposed on the corner on the front, it is a soft spot on the steel. So let's look right here and I'll show you these welds. The welds here are protected because we've got basically a lap going in here. So when you're shooting straight on, you can't impact those welds. And the type of welding that we do is also critical. We learned many years ago, back in 2015 when we were first building our targets, if you use standard welding practices, you just run hard wire in your MIG welder, they'll crack. Over time, it will absolutely crack. So we use a very specific wire. It's a gas shielded flux core. It really bites into the steel. It's got some flexibility in there and it allows some movement of the plates without cracking of the welds. That's also why we put a lifetime warranty on our welds. If they crack and it results in a failure on this dueling tree, if some weld cracks and your dueling tree fails, you cannot use it anymore. Guess what? You get a new dueling tree because we actually care about you and your training. So we've got the armor here. Stray rounds at impact are going to cause no damage. Now, obviously, this is not a target. We don't want you intentionally shooting this because if you used it as a target, over time, you could put a lot of wear and tear into the shield. It could cause damage over time, especially if you're shooting at improper distances. But this shield is how we are able to rate this thing for rifles. You heard me right. You can shoot this thing even with your 308 with the correct paddle choice, and we'll talk about that in a second. But let's look at the back here, and we'll talk about the gussets and also how the paddles are stood off of the shield. So like I was talking about with the small dueling tree, a good dueling tree will have the stops built into the gussets. And what I mean by that is it's not resting up against the shield. So it doesn't matter what you do. This paddle, when you swing it, is not going to result in 4 other paddles moving. We tested that extensively. When we talk about our paddles, Look at how thick that leg is. I don't remember that dimension off the top of my head, but notice everything has a radius. See that? Even this gusset, it hits right here on the gusset, but everything has a radius on the paddle. And we do that to avoid the cracking and the chipping and the wear and tear. Now you could find the lifespan of this paddle if you abuse it or misuse it, but we sell replacements on our website. These paddles are AR 550. They are the amazing armor that you see in all of our armor piercing test videos. No joke, this stuff is incredible. When we look at these gussets again from the back, you'll see that our paddles fit into that keyway. For us, we burn every gusset the same just for consistency. So you'll notice that gusset, the keyway I should say, is top and bottom. But we weld our gussets in 4 places. Everything is stitched. We don't solid weld anything. We're trying to keep as much heat out of the plates as possible, because when you weld onto hardened steel, you are weakening that steel as well. So when we get to the overall spine of this thing and we're thinking about this as a cohesive unit, you'll also notice that ours leans forward so much more. That's important because we're consistent with our forward lean with all of our target systems. That helps direct the fragmentation down to the ground. Just like all of our target systems, you'll get a nice fragmentation pattern in the ground, verifying that you are safely putting all of those rounds into the ground. And as with all of our steel target systems, this thing is powder coated, it's elegant. All the fit, finish, the function, how the paddles fit, how they interface with the gussets, the welds, the weld locations, all of those things were hard fought, hard earned. We learned it the hard way, and we built a system that allows you to train with virtually any standard caliber that you could run into. A standard feature as well on our dueling tree is the fact that it is multi-caliber rated. What I mean by that is you've got 3 different sizes of paddles that you can purchase. We have a 3/16 paddle, and that's gonna be perfect for 22 long rifle. So the exact same spine, no changes. You buy a different set of paddles, you're shooting your 22s. If you get the standard 3/8 inch AR 550 paddles, these are rated for your standard center fire handguns like 38 Special, 357, 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson 10mm, 45 ACP, and all of your standard semi-auto carry guns. You can shoot Magnum pistols at this thing at 25 yards with this paddle configuration. But we also have a 1/2 inch paddle here that is extremely beefy. This is our 308 paddle. So this is the one that you can drop right in. It looks very similar, but it is thicker. It's 1/2 inch AR 550 steel. You can replace all 6 with this bad boy, and then you can be rocking your 308s, your 6.5 Creedmoors, 6.5 PRCs, and even some of your long action calibers. As you get out to further distances, you're able to run those things on this dueling tree with one purchase. So yes, this thing is more expensive. This dueling tree will cost you likely double, sometimes triple, depending on what Chinese product you're looking at. But what are you getting with it? You're getting an American-made product. You're getting one with a warranty. We stand behind it. It is overbuilt and over-engineered to be able to be planted on your range and forgotten about. You can just run it, touch it up with spray paint, and do some basic maintenance over time, but you don't have to worry about it. It's not gonna fall over on you when you're training. And when I think back on the last 10 years, the journey to building a system like this, it started with a little tiny rickety pistol rated dueling tree that feels a lot like the one that I have on my right. But over time, that consistency and that commitment to building better systems led us to this point with this dueling tree. So that's our dueling tree. You guys can decide if you think it's worthwhile for you. We think we did it the best way possible, but ultimately, I'm just one guy, just one opinion. I want to know what you guys think. And at the very least, I hope that this sheds some light on the price differences between 2 systems and why that's going to happen. Everything that goes into our dueling tree takes more initial cost. It's a more expensive product up front, more labor, and more engineering going into it so that the end result is a more refined system. When you buy something less expensive, you are not getting those same luxuries that come with it, that same performance that could come with that system. There is a reason every single time why something is priced different than something else. And on top of that, as we know, products made overseas often are made with less expensive labor, and they pass that on to you. They're basically just able to manufacture a product for cheaper, but you sacrifice something every time. So I hope that was helpful to you and it shed some light on dueling trees in general and the engineering behind them. If you found it helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, leave me a comment down below. And if you have any questions and you want me to dive a little deeper into this topic, let me know. I'd be happy to. See y'all next time. There we freaking go.